You're listening to Media Automated. Join us as we explore the intersection between self-improvement and business excellence, showing you the strategies that will help you take your message, your brand, and your podcast to the next level. Let's begin. Today, we're going to talk about frameworks and how effective they are in helping you to share your message in a way that gets and keeps attention from the people that you want to have noticing your message. My name is Bryce Prescott, and you're listening to another episode of Media Automated, where self-improvement meets business excellence. I say this every episode. I'm excited for this episode because part of the dance of what this podcast is I get to submit and give to you, teach you different things that you can apply immediately into your business, into your brand, however you choose to tell your story personally. It's really powerful stuff. And as I was thinking about what the episode should be about, I started noticing as I was looking around at different marketing how something as simple as a framework for storytelling is missing. A lot of people don't even know how to tell a good story. They don't know how to share what the actual sort of arc would be to get to where you as a listener are following along and you're feeling the energy and you're feeling the urgency and you're feeling the pull and the push and it's a good engaging story. That's a problem. That problem will be something that you experience until you change that. You have to learn how to be a better storyteller. And fortunately, it's not actually that difficult or complicated. There are some very simple frameworks that you can learn that make it so that when you tell a story and when you talk your message into existence, that it's engaging. It's not just, the who, what, when, where, why. I guess technically that's a framework. Who, what, when, where, why. That's a boring story, but it works. But the reason why I wanted to get into this is because if you don't address this, it's going to affect everything. It'll affect your engagement. It'll affect how people view your company and your brand. It will affect how people look at you as somebody that is a leader. Like really powerful leadership comes from good storytelling. Think about that. The people that you listen to and that you find yourself drawn into for what they're sharing, it's because they're telling a good story. Every charismatic leader, if we go back to our last episode, we talk about building a fanatical cult-like following for your business. The charismatic leader has to have in his toolbox frameworks on how to tell good stories, depending on what the intent of the story is. And so I wanted to basically break down some of the frameworks that I've taught my clients over the years. I'm going to share with you two of them, but I'm only going to spend a little bit of time on the first one. The first framework is called What, Why, Lesson, Apply. So if you were to sit down and prepare a talk or a podcast episode, you're going to sit behind a microphone. There is something that you want to talk about, the what. You can state the what, no matter whatever it is. You can say, for example, your business needs more clients and you are feeling a lack of revenue because of it. That's what. Well, then you can go into the why and you describe the why. And then you can talk about, well, what's the lesson of all this? And then you could talk about the application of that. That's a very simple framework. Some of the masters use this. I know if you follow guys like Garrett J. White, he uses what, why, lesson, apply all the time. When you can understand this framework and you can see it and hear it, you'll realize how dynamic it is, and I invite you to try it. The one that works best, though, for podcasting and video is the one that I've used on every single episode of this podcast. After teaching this to you, if you were to go back and listen to other episodes and even episodes you'll hear in the future, you will see and understand this framework because there are different tells that I use in this. This framework, we're going to leave that burp in there, buddy. Like I just do it live. All right. This 4-part framework, you will be able to see and hear as you get the ear for it. And it's very, very dynamic because what it does is when you use it over and over and over again, what happens is the people that listen and watch you and that have seen you do this, you will be allowed to ask more of them. So what does this framework look like? Well, quite simply, like I said, it's in 4 parts. And the first part is you state a problem. You state a problem to which your intended client or listener or viewer has. So let's rewind the tape just a little bit. I started this episode telling you there's a problem that I see in that you don't know how to use frameworks. Okay? So you state the problem as a part of the first step in this framework. But you also can't just leave it at that. You have to differentiate the problem from a symptom of the problem. And as you do so, and as you explain to that as the orator, as the podcast host, as the speaker, what will happen is people will start to listen to you and they will start to see that you know what you're talking about. Now, he can differentiate between what the problem is and what the symptom. I thought the symptom was the actual problem, but it's clearly not. So, as an example, you can say, and this is somewhat egregious, if you will, but I can say the problem is that I'm overweight or that you're overweight. Well, no. Overweight is a symptom of the problem. The actual problem is that you have denied your body the nutrients and care that it needs because of how you see yourself in your body. Being overweight's a symptom. That's actually not the problem. The problem is over here. Another example of that would be my marriage is failing. Okay, you think that's the problem. That's actually a symptom of the problem. The actual problem is that you aren't investing and connecting and communicating in a way with your partner and spouse that allows for the relationship to grow. Do you see what I'm doing here? When you describe the problem, it's always an emotional response, and it's always something that really defines the root of what the actual problem is, and you differentiate it between the symptom that is usually the low-hanging fruit. You could say it's a problem that my marriage isn't working, and I would agree with you, but it's not actually the full problem, as I stated. So in this first part of this framework, you state the problem, whatever problem it is that you see. You'll hear me use the phrase, this is a problem that I see. And then from there, you describe it in detail. And then you differentiate between the symptom of the problem and the actual problem. If you were to, again, rewind the tape and go back and listen to this, you'll see that I've done that as I'm talking to you about frameworks and about what it means to use a framework and how you not using a framework is actually a symptom of the problem, but the actual problem is you don't even know it because you're not well versed enough in storytelling. Being a powerful and dynamic storytelling is something that a powerful and dynamic storyteller is something that you need to do and learn. Okay, so now that we've stated the problem, what's the second part? The second part of this 4-part framework is that you make it worse, is what I call it. You describe the scenario of the problem, and you walk it down the line of what happens if that problem does not go fixed or addressed. You make it worse. You say, well, if you don't address these issues in your marriage, as an example, you're headed for divorce, you're headed for disconnect, you're going to lose half your money. Like you absurdly tell them as if the sky's falling, everything that's going to go wrong if they do not fix the problem. Like I said, you can go back and listen to all the other episodes of Media Automated, and you will see and hear a part of this where I do this in every episode. You make it worse. You describe what happens when the problem goes unaddressed. Now, in this part of the speech, the podcast episode, the content, I encourage you to be absurd, to be Chicken Little, talk about the sky falling. And I also encourage you to use all of the emotions that you have capable. Be funny, be dramatic. Show exuberant excitement, be scared. Go back and forth between those emotions. Share success stories about you or your clients or people in your life. Share failure stories about you, your clients, or people in your life. By describing this scenario at its worst, does a few things. For the person listening or watching your content, they start to think, wow, this guy, he can kind of see the future. And if they start to see you as somebody that has an extra level of awareness and that can see and perceive things that are outside of the norm of what you can, they will start to trust you more. They will start to think, okay, maybe I don't know what I thought I knew. Maybe this person could be a guy that could help me to solve this problem. It's very subtle, but it happens. When you make it worse, you do these things where you actually Show them scenarios they might not want to hear about or be prepared for. And as I said, as a review, you be dramatic, you be absurd, you use all of your emotions, you describe success stories, failure stories. This part of the framework has no time frame. You can spend 90% of the time in this place where you're describing the different scenarios of what's going to go wrong if you don't fix your problem. It's pretty intense. Now, the third aspect of this framework is where you kind of solve their problem. You don't fully solve it, but you kind of solve it. You give them information. You give them an anecdote. You give them something that they can use or do that's an action that they take for themselves that rewards them. You give them something that says, look, if you do this, it will kind of solve your problem. And you also use phrases like, and you've heard me say this, I can't solve this on a podcast episode, but what I can do is offer you this. Now, in a little bit of inception-like awareness right now, we're in the third phase of this 4-part framework right now. I'm describing for you this framework that you can use. And you'll also notice that by me giving you these keys, it doesn't actually solve your problem. It gives you an opportunity to try this something new that you can apply. And what will actually happen is as you do that, as you apply this framework, if you're taking notes, okay, part 1, state the problem, part 2, make it worse, part 3, kind of solve it. Okay, there will come a point when you try to apply this after the fact where you'll be like, ugh, I thought I got it, but I don't. Just being real. There's some of you out there that will be able to take this and run with it, but there will be some of you that will need to review it. And most likely, you will only get it once you employ somebody like me to actually truly teach it to you in a really comprehensive way. So I am telling you that the problem that I see in this episode is that you don't know how to use frameworks and that you're not good at storytelling. I'm sharing with you what happens if that goes unfixed and that you're going to continue to struggle in your business. People aren't going to want to engage with your content. You're going to have a hard time making offers. And then I'm saying, okay, so here's the answer though, but not really. Here's a framework you can use. State the problem, make it worse, kind of solve it. I'm teaching you this framework, but the application of that framework is still wherein all of this works. In order for you to become better at storytelling, in order for that problem to go away for you, what it means is you've got to become a master at using frameworks in the moment. And by me sharing this with you, it doesn't make you a master. It just gives you two opposing emotions. It gives you momentum on the one side, go, hell yeah, I can use this. This is amazing. And then when you go to apply it, wow, it's more difficult than I thought. It's kind of cool to be sitting here, giving you guys a little shot under the kimono, so to speak, of how this works. Because that is a key part of this third thing when you kind of solve it, is you actually can't solve their problem on a podcast episode. You can't solve their problem giving a speech. You can't solve their problem on a Facebook or Instagram live. The problem gets solved when there's an identity shift paired with new skill sets that allow them then to completely restructure, in this case, how they tell stories. And the stories that they tell bring people back in. They hook them. They're more attractive. They get them to be a part of that thing that makes them want to engage with you because you tell good stories. Now, the fourth part and the final part of this 4-part formula is a call to action. And that call to action is self-serving. That call to action is when you, as a host or a speaker or content creator, you petition your listeners or viewers with something like this. I've talked a lot today about this thing that's your problem. If I've hit the mark at all, or I've inspired you to want to make change, what I'd like to ask you is to do X. You ask them to reward you for getting it right. I've done this on every single episode of this. I'm asking for ratings and reviews. I'm encouraging you that if you wanted to work with me, reach out, click the link to get on my calendar. There's something that I'm asking of you in exchange for me getting it right, what I've shared with you. And you can use this. This is a key part because it's how you actually learn if your content is moving the needle, is if people are taking you up on your call to action to reward you for being right. So if I'm right, for example, so let's go back into, like I said, this is inception. I'm talking about layers here. I'm giving you an episode where I've said, you suck at storytelling. You need to learn better how to frame your stories. If you don't, part one, that's the problem. You suck at storytelling and you need to learn to reframe your stories. Part two, this is what happens if you don't. You're going to struggle with engagement. You're going to struggle with boring content. Your ideal listener and client isn't going to reach out to you because they have no reason to. You bored them to death. Okay, so the third thing is kind of solving it. I'm teaching you these frameworks. What, why, lesson, apply was a framework I taught you, as well as this one. State the problem, kind of solve, make it worse, kind of solve it in a call to action. So right now, I'm in that fourth part of the framework. I've done the first three. And now I'm saying, okay, if this worked for you, if you're seeing in your business where you could be better about establishing a container of communication and that you could have quite simple rules that you could live by when you're telling stories that make it so that there is an arc that's interesting and engaging, I want you to tell me. I'm asking you to leave this podcast a 5-star rating and review. I'm asking you to get on my calendar, go to mediaautomated.com, go up to the book call part and get on a discovery call with me. If you listen to this podcast, do a screen grab and post it on your Instagram and tag me in it. I'm asking you to do something in exchange for getting it right. Man, this is some meta stuff, dude. Like, I want you to use this framework. My clients pay me a lot of money to teach them to become masters at this. And as they become masters at this, their business transforms because they now have a way of engaging the people that are listening or viewing their content so that they feel a part of it and compelled. They feel like the person telling the story understands them. They live in that space of now elevating the person that's behind the microphone to be somebody that actually knows what they're talking about. See, the beautiful thing of these frameworks is that when you do it over time, again and again and again and again and again, people start to think of you as an expert. Partly because you've earned it, but partly because you've positioned it time and time again to where you've shared with them details and perspectives and awarenesses of their problem that they couldn't even see. And you've told them what's going to happen when they don't fix it, which makes them think you can see the future. You have a little crystal ball. And then when you kind of solve it, you leave them a little bit hanging with an invitation after the fact, a call to action to reach out to them or to reward them in some way for getting it right. So I want you to do that. I want you to use this framework. I want you to apply it into your business immediately. I want you to become better at storytelling, which means you're going to have an incredible podcast if you do that. And lastly, I would love to be the one to help you do that. Part of the work that I do as the founder and a lead trainer here is I work one-on-one with individuals to help them establish not only who it is that they're speaking to, what problem they solve and who they solve it for. I then teach them the things on how to make it so that whatever they speak to that person resonates deeply and is attractive and is something that allows them to feel like they could overcome their current issue and be transported into a new place where their problems are solved. Isn't that what we all want? If we provide a service or a product, we want that product or service to help people and to solve problems. Well, here you go. So that's my invitation to you. If I got it right, I shared with you some things on what you can do, but I want you to use this framework. And to review, state the problem first, make it worse, kind of solve it, call to action. Send me your stories about this as you try this. Send me your success and failure stories. Some of you aren't going to get it right the first time, and that's fine. But as we've talked, it's important to have a strong growth-based mindset as well as having access to tactical skills. You becoming a better storyteller is a tactical skill. to which your success requires. Your growth into master storytelling starts now. My friends, my name is Bryce Prescott, and you've listened to another episode of Media Automated, where self-improvement meets business excellence. I'll see you next week.